Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, how are you today? Hopefully you are in a good condition. Welcome back to Tefl class, teaching English as foreign language. Here we are going to talk about teaching English as foreign language techniques in relating to teaching in a classroom. And today's topic will be about teaching receptive skills, especially about listening and reading skills. Okay, so what are the learning objectives for today's topic? We have 3 learning objectives. The first, at the end of this topic, students are able to explain principles of teaching receptive skills, listening and reading. The second, students are able to explain the principle of micro skills in listening and reading. And then the last one, students are able to explain listening and reading performances in the classroom. Let's go to the concept of receptive skills. What do you know about receptive skills? That's right. When we talk about receptive skills, it is about listening and reading in which people extract meaning from the discourse they see or hear. Listening and reading are skills which are categorized as receptive skills as they involve responding to language rather than producing it. When we read a story or newspaper, listen to the news, or take part in a conversation, we use our previous knowledge as we approach the process of comprehension, and we utilize a range of receptive skills depending on our reading or listening purposes. When we talk about listening and reading skills, we are going to have 2 processing in these skills. The first is top-down and the second is bottom-up. Have you heard that? Yeah, top-down processing is the reader or listener gets a general view of the reading or listening passage by observing the overall picture. It means like you look from the up to get the general view of a text, both from listening or reading activity. But in bottom-up processing, on the other hand, the reader or listener focuses on individual words and phrases and achieves understanding by stringing these detailed elements together to build up a whole concept. Now let's go to the next conversations. It is about the principles in teaching listening. According to Nunan, there are several principles in teaching listening. The first, it is included a focus on listening is an integrated skills course. It is important to create effective listening techniques which requires the attention of the students to focus on spoken language. The second principle, we have to use the techniques that are intrinsically motivating. Teachers should try appealing to the listener's personal interests and goals. And then the third principle, we can use the authentic language and context in order to enable students to see the relevance of classroom activities to their long-term communicative goals. And then the next one, carefully considering the form of listener responses, because we can only know the students' understanding by the students' responses to the speech. And then the next one is encouraging the development of listening and reading strategy. And then the next one is include both bottom-up and top-down listening techniques. And then we go to the principle for teaching reading. There are 8 principles for teaching reading according to Nunan. The first is exploit the reader's background knowledge. In reading, actually, the students are going to give their background knowledge to the input they get from the reading text. So it is better choice for teacher to exploit the students' understanding through the text, and by asking them several questions, they can dig the background knowledge of them. The second, build a strong vocabulary base. We know that reading is an input towards our knowledge. So through reading, teacher can build a strong vocabulary for students. Teachers should encourage students to build up their vocabulary mastery. And then the next one, teach for comprehension. As we know that there are several purposes of reading. The first is reading for academic, and then reading for entertainment, and reading for comprehension. So when we are going to teach reading for comprehension, we can make sure that our students can have the skills to comprehend the text correctly. And then the fourth is work on increasing reading rate. Do you know reading rate? Yeah, reading rate is the speed of someone can comprehend a text within a period of time, especially in a minute. Yeah. When we want to increase the students' reading rate, we have to be consistent, encouraging students to develop their skills in reading comprehensions. The next one is teach reading strategies. There are several kinds of strategies that can be implemented in reading, like skimming and scanning. I hope you know that skimming is rapidly read the text to get the general picture of a text, while scanning is read rapidly to get specific information from the text. Now we go to the sixth principle. It is encourage readers to transform strategies into skills. After the students implement several strategies to get the reading comprehension from a text, it can be a good skill for them to implement every time they read a text. And then the seventh is build assessment and evaluation into your teaching. Assessment and evaluation is very important because as a teacher, we should know how far the students can achieve the learning objectives. And through assessment and evaluation, we can check whether the students have achieved the learning objective through reading activities. And then the last one is strive for continuous improvement as a reading teacher. As a teacher, we should be consistent in encouraging students to improve their ability in reading, especially when they have to implement their skills in doing their reading. Okay. Now we will go to the micro skills in reading and listening. According to Jawi 2010, there are several micro skills that can be implemented by the students in reading and listening skill. The first micro skills is identifying topic. This ability allows the students to process the text more efficiently as it progresses, since they know the main idea of the text. And then the second is predicting and guessing. Predicting and guessing is very important for students to get the main idea of the text. Here, the students can look forward, try to predict what is coming, or they can make assumptions or guess the content from their initial glance or hearing of the text. And then the next one is reading and listening for general understanding. It means that it is not stopping for every word or analyzing everything in the text. We read or listen for general understanding means that we will get only the general picture of the text that we read or we listen through the spoken language. And then the next one is reading and listening for specific information. In this kind of micro skill, the student will only concentrate on particular item that interests the students, and they may ignore all other information except for the specific item that they are looking for. And then the next one is reading and listening for detailed information. Different from the reading and listening for specific information, students in this kind of micro skills can listen or read in a very concentrated way to everything is said or written to get the whole information from the text. And then the last one is interpreting text. It happens when students are able to see beyond the literal meaning of the words in a passage, using a variety of clues to understand what the writer or speaker is implying or suggesting. The next one is about the listening performances in the classroom. Brown in 2001 mentioned several listening performances can be done in a classroom. The first is reactive. In this type of performance, the learners will only listen to survey structure of an utterance for the single purpose of repeating it and not generating meaning. And then the second type of the listening performance is intensive. The purpose of this intensive performance is to focus on components of discourse through individual drills. The teacher repeats a word or sentence several times to strengthen it in the student's mind. The teacher asks students to listen to sentence to notice specified elements such as intonation, stress, grammatical structure, and etc. And then the next one is responsive. Listening activity that allows teachers to get appropriate reply for the students. So here, there will be a communication between teacher and students that includes asking questions, giving commands, seeking clarification, and checking comprehension. The next listening performance is selective. Here, the students are supposed to scan the material selectively for certain information. The purpose of this activity is to find important information in a field of potentially distracting information. And then the next one is extensive. This activity aims to develop a top-down global understanding to longer lectures, to listening to a conversation and deriving a comprehensive message or purpose. This performance may require students to invoke other interactive skills like note-taking or decision for full comprehension. And then the next one is interactive. In listening performance of interactive, learners will actively participate in discussion, debates, conversations, role plays, and other pair and group work. The listening performance must be integrated with speaking skills in authentic communicative interchange. The next one is about reading performance in a classroom. So basically, there are two different reading performances in a classroom. The first is oral and silent reading, and then the second is intensive and extensive reading. Oral reading can serve as an evaluative check on bottom-up processing skills. It can also be used to check pronunciation and add some extra student participation when highlighting certain sequence of reading passage. And then in intensive and extensive reading is a usually classroom-oriented activity in which students focus on linguistic or semantic details of a passage. It requires students' attention to grammatical forms, discourse markers, and other surface structure to understand literal meanings, implication, rhetorical relationship, and etc. While the extensive reading is carried out to achieve the general understanding of a longer text, most of extensive reading is performed outside of the class time. For example, reading for pleasure. Now we will come to a summary. So, receptive skills are the ways in which people extract meaning from the discourse they see or hear. And usually when we talk about listening and reading, we are going to talk about top-down processing and bottom-up processing, in which top-down processing means overviewing the text for general picture of the content, while the bottom-up means starting from the elements to build up the whole understanding. In teaching receptive skills, teachers should consider how students can gain the skills in reading and listening comprehension, since the main purpose of receptive skills is to get meaning of spoken or written form. And the last, teachers need to consider kinds of classroom activity in teaching both skills in order to get a good environment in teaching receptive skills. Here are the references that you can use to deepen your knowledge about how to teach receptive skills, especially listening and reading. And then we go to the exercises. I have already provided 4 questions for you. So please read the exercise, the questions carefully, and then try to answer it by reading back to the material that I have already explained, and also by reading up to the books that I have already provided in references. Okay guys, I think that's all for today's discussion about how to teach receptive skills. I hope you can understand the material that I have explained, and we'll see you again in our next video. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.